Moorland Shadows. Chapter 1. The House on the Hill. The wind never stopped on Blackthorn Moor. It howled across the barren landscape like a living thing, bending the gorse and heather, rattling the shutters of the few scattered farmhouses that dared to cling to this desolate stretch of northern England. The locals said the wind carried voices, whispers of the dead who had perished on these moors over centuries of storms and hardship. Isla Farrow had heard those whispers her entire life. She stood now at the iron gates of Ravenscroft Hall, the decrepit mansion that crowned the highest point of the moor like a blackened tooth. The building was a Gothic monstrosity, all sharp angles and dark stone, its windows like empty eyes staring out across the wild landscape. Ivy strangled the walls. The roof sagged in places. Chimneys crumbled against the perpetual grey sky. This was her inheritance, this ruin, this curse. Isla was 22 years old, small and dark-haired, with eyes the colour of storm clouds. She had grown up in the village of Thornfield at the foot of the moor, raised by her mother Sarah after her father had died when she was barely old enough to remember him. They had been poor, desperately so, living in a cramped cottage and surviving on her mother's work as a seamstress. And then, 3 weeks ago, her mother had died of pneumonia, whispering secrets with her last breath. "We're not my daughter by blood," Sarah had gasped, her hand clutching Isla's with fading strength. "Your real mother was Catherine Farrow of Ravenscroft Hall. She died giving birth to you. I was her maid. She made me promise to raise you away from that house, away from HIM. But now I'm dying and you must know the truth. Ravenscroft is yours by right. The estate, the land, everything. But beware of Damian Farrow. He is your mother's cousin, and he has lived in that house alone since her death, waiting. He is dangerous, Isla. He is mad. Promise me you won't go there. Promise me." But Isla had made no such promise. After her mother's funeral, she had sought out the family solicitor, a nervous man named Mr. Grave, who confirmed the story with obvious reluctance. Catherine Farrow had indeed left a will naming her infant daughter as heir to the Ravenscroft estate. The will had been contested by Damian Farrow, but it was ironclad. The property was legally Isla's. "I must advise against taking possession, Miss Farrow," Mr. Grave had said, wringing his hands. "The estate is worthless. The house is falling apart. The land yields nothing. And Mr. Damian Farrow, he is not a man to cross. He has lived there for 22 years believing himself the master. He will not take kindly to being displaced." "Then he should have treated my mother better," Isla had replied coldly. "What kind of man lets his cousin's child be raised in poverty while he lives in a mansion?" Mr. Grave had no answer to that. So here she stood, on a bitter March afternoon, with her few possessions in a worn carpet-bag, staring at the house that should have been her birthright. The wind whipped her dark cloak around her legs. Rain threatened in the heavy clouds overhead. She pushed open the gate. The hinges screamed in protest. The path to the house was overgrown with weeds, barely visible among the wild grass. As Isla walked, she felt eyes upon her. She turned and saw a figure standing in one of the upper windows of the house, a dark silhouette against the dim light within. Damian Farrow, it had to be. Isla squared her shoulders and continued forward. She would not be intimidated. This was her house, her inheritance. She had every right to be here. The front door was massive, made of black oak and adorned with a tarnished brass knocker shaped like a raven. Isla lifted it and let it fall 3 times. The sound echoed hollowly. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the door swung inward, revealing an entrance hall that smelled of damp and decay. Candles flickered in tarnished sconces, casting dancing shadows across walls that had once been grand but were now water-stained and peeling. And there, standing at the foot of a grand staircase, was Damian Farrow. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with a lean, almost gaunt frame. His face was strikingly handsome but severe, all sharp cheekbones and a strong jaw. His hair was black as coal, worn longer than was fashionable, falling almost to his shoulders. But it was his eyes that caught Isla's attention. They were an unusual shade of pale grey, almost silver, and they burned with an intensity that made her want to step backward. He was perhaps 30 years old, dressed entirely in black, his clothing expensive but worn, as if he cared nothing for appearances. "So," he said, his voice deep and rough, like gravel grinding together, "the bastard child finally comes to claim her throne." Isla lifted her chin, refusing to show fear. "I am Catherine Pharaoh's legitimate daughter. This house belongs to me by law. I have come to take possession." Damian descended the stairs slowly, each step deliberate. "Take possession? How very formal. Tell me, Isla, did your nursemaid mother teach you about this place? Did she tell you what it means to be a pharaoh? Did she warn you what lives in these walls?" "She warned me about you," Isla replied. "She said you were dangerous, mad, but I see only a bitter man living in a decaying house, clinging to property that isn't his." Something flashed in Damian's eyes. Anger, perhaps, or amusement. It was impossible to tell. He stopped a few feet from her, close enough that she could see the dark circles under his eyes, the hollow cast to his cheeks that suggested he rarely ate or slept properly. "Bitter," he repeated, tasting the word. "Yes, that's accurate, and mad, perhaps. 22 years alone in this house would drive anyone to madness. But dangerous?" He leaned closer, and Isla could smell whiskey on his breath. "That depends entirely on whether you're wise enough to turn around and leave, right now, before you learn things that cannot be unlearned." "I'm not leaving," Isla said firmly. "This is my home." Damian laughed, but there was no joy in it. "Your home? You have no idea what you're claiming, but very well, you want Ravenscroft. You can have it, the entire rotting corpse of it. I'll take my things and leave by tomorrow." He turned away, heading back up the stairs. "Wait," Isla called out. Something in his easy capitulation felt wrong. "That's it, you're just going to leave." Damian paused, looking back over his shoulder. "What else would you have me do? Fight you? Contest the will again? I've spent 22 years trapped in this house, waiting for the rightful heir to come of age. Now you're here, my obligation is fulfilled, I'm free." "Obligation to whom?" Isla asked. But Damian was already climbing the stairs again, disappearing into the shadows of the upper floor. His voice drifted back, barely audible over the wind that rattled the windows. "To the dead, Miss Pharaoh, always to the dead." Isla stood alone in the entrance hall, her bag still clutched in her hand, wondering what exactly she had walked into. Chapter 2, Secrets in Stone. Isla spent her first night at Ravenscroft Hall in what had once been the library. She had explored the ground floor cautiously, finding room after room filled with furniture covered in dusty sheets, portraits of stern-faced ancestors staring down from the walls, and everywhere the smell of mildew and abandonment. The kitchen was functional but bare. The drawing rooms were elegant but cold. The dining hall could seat 30, but looked as though it hadn't hosted a meal in decades. The library, at least, had a fireplace that still drew properly. Isla managed to coax a fire to life using wood from a pile in the corner, probably left there by Damian. She found blankets in a chest, musty but serviceable, and made herself as comfortable as possible in a large leather chair near the fire. Sleep came fitfully. The house groaned and creaked around her, settling in ways that sounded almost like footsteps. The wind outside never ceased its howling, and once, around midnight, she heard something that made her sit bolt upright. Singing, a woman's voice, faint and mournful, coming from somewhere above. Isla grabbed a candle and crept to the library door, her heart hammering. The hallway beyond was dark, the candle flame casting wild shadows. She stood listening, but the singing had stopped. Perhaps she had imagined it. Perhaps it was just the wind in the chimneys playing tricks. She returned to her chair and eventually fell into uneasy dreams. Morning came gray and cold. Isla woke with a stiff neck and the uncomfortable realization that she would need to make this house livable if she intended to stay. That meant cleaning, repairs, and money she didn't have. She found Damian in the kitchen, of all places, making tea. He looked as though he hadn't slept at all, his eyes bloodshot. His hair disheveled, but his hands were steady as he poured boiling water into a chipped teapot. "Tea," he offered, not looking at her. "Thank you," Isla said, surprised by the civility. They sat at opposite ends of a long wooden table, drinking in silence. Outside, rain had begun to fall, drumming against the windows in a steady rhythm. "You heard her, didn't you?" Damian said finally. Isla's cup froze halfway to her lips. "Heard who?" "Catherine, your mother. She sings sometimes at night, usually when there's a new person in the house." Isla set down her cup carefully. "That's absurd. My mother is dead. The dead don't sing." "Don't they?" Damian's smile was bitter. "You have much to learn about Ravenscroft, little cousin. The dead are more present here than the living. They always have been." "You're trying to frighten me," Isla said, "to make me leave." If only it were that simple. Damian stood and walked to the window, staring out at the rain-lashed moor. "I told you I would leave today. I lied. I cannot leave. None of us can truly leave this place. It holds us, calls us back. I've tried 3 times over the years to escape. The farthest I got was London. I lasted 2 months before the dreams started. Dreams of this house, of the moor, of voices calling my name. I came back, and the moment I crossed the threshold, the dreams stopped." "That's not supernatural," Isla said, though her voice lacked conviction. "That's guilt, attachment, psychology." Damian turned to face her. "Believe what you like, but answer me this. Why did you come here? You could have sold the property without ever setting foot inside. Mr. Grave would have handled everything. You could have taken the money and made a new life elsewhere. So why are you here, Isla?" She opened her mouth to answer, then closed it again. Why had she come? Anger at her poverty, curiosity about her birth mother, a sense of rightful ownership. Or was it something else? Something she had felt pulling at her ever since she learned of Ravenscroft's existence, a connection she couldn't name or explain. "I don't know," she admitted quietly. "That's the house," Damian said. "It wanted you here, just as it wanted me here 22 years ago when Catherine died, just as it has held every pharaoh for generations. We are bound to this place, you and I, blood and stone, and the sooner you accept that, the easier it will be." "I don't accept anything," Isla said, standing. "This is just a house. Old and decrepit, yes, but still just wood and stone and glass. There's nothing supernatural about it, and if you choose to imprison yourself here out of some misguided sense of duty or family curse, that's your choice. But I won't be manipulated by ghost stories." Damian studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Very well. I'll make you a bargain. I'll stay for 1 week, 7 days. In that time, I'll show you the truth of Ravenscroft. I'll show you the records, the history, the things that have happened in this house. And if, at the end of that week, you still believe it's all nonsense, I'll leave. I'll sign whatever papers you want disclaiming any right to this place, and you'll never see me again." "And if I come to believe your ghost stories?" Isla challenged. Damian's smile was grim. "Then we'll face the future together, because you'll need help surviving what's to come." Against her better judgment, Isla agreed. The days that followed were strange beyond anything Isla had ever experienced. Damian proved to be a knowledgeable, if unsettling, guide to Ravenscroft's history. He showed her the family records kept in a locked study on the 2nd floor, ledgers and journals and letters dating back 300 years. The pharaohs had always been a cursed line, it seemed. Every generation had seen tragedy. In 1724, Thomas Pharaoh had murdered his wife and her lover, then hanged himself in the entrance hall. In 1789, Margaret Pharaoh had thrown herself from the highest tower, mad with grief over a stillborn child. In 1843, the entire family had died of fever except for one daughter, who survived only to drown herself in the Moor bog a year later. "They couldn't leave," Damian explained, showing Isla the accounts. "Look at the patterns. Every pharaoh who tried to escape the house to start a new life elsewhere was drawn back, and those who resisted the call met terrible ends. The house wants us here, needs us here. I don't know why. I've spent 2 decades trying to understand it." "These are just tragic coincidences," Isla insisted, though the sheer number of deaths made her uneasy. "Then explain this," Damian said, pulling out a newer journal. His own handwriting filled the pages. "I've kept records of the phenomena. The singing you heard, that's Catherine. She appears most often in the room where she died, the master bedroom, but there are others. My father can be heard packing the halls at night. He died of a heart attack right here in this house. My grandmother whispers in the conservatory, though no one has been able to understand what she's saying. And then there are the older ones, the pharaohs from centuries past. They're fainter, harder to perceive, but they're present." Isla read the journal entries, her skepticism warring with a growing sense of dread. Damian had meticulously documented years of experiences, dates, times, descriptions of phenomena, cold spots in certain rooms, objects that moved on their own, shadows that didn't match any physical source. "You could have fabricated all of this," she said. "I could have," Damian agreed, "but I didn't. Tonight I'll take you to the master bedroom. You can judge for yourself." That night, after a tense dinner eaten in silence, Damian led Isla up the grand staircase to the third floor. The master bedroom was at the end of a long hallway, its door marked with faded letters that spelled out Catherine. "She asked for her name to be put on the door," Damian said quietly. "Near the end, when she knew she was dying in childbirth, she wanted to make sure people remembered who had lived there. Your mother was vain, Isla, but also strong, stronger than anyone gave her credit for." He opened the door, revealing a room that was surprisingly well-maintained compared to the rest of the house. The bed was made with clean linens. Fresh flowers sat in a vase by the window. Candles burned on the dresser. "You maintain this room," Isla said. "She asks me to," Damian replied. "Not in words, but I can feel what she wants. Fresh flowers weekly, candles lit, the room kept clean and beautiful. It's the least I can do for her." "Why do you care so much about her memory?" Isla asked. "She was your cousin, but the way you speak of her, it's as if." "As if I loved her," Damian finished. His laugh was hollow. "I did, desperately, obsessively, from the moment I first came to this house at age 8, orphaned and alone, and she took me under her wing. She was 16, beautiful, kind to a lonely boy. I worshipped her, and as I grew older, that worship turned into something darker, something she never returned." He walked to the window, staring out at the dark moor. "She married someone else, a merchant from the village. He died in an accident 6 months after the wedding, threw from a horse. Some said it was my doing, that I had spooked the animal deliberately. I didn't, but I was glad when he died. Is that evil, Isla, to be glad of another's death because it meant the woman you loved was available again?" "Did she love you?" Isla asked quietly. "No, she pitied me, cared for me as family, but love, never. And when she became pregnant, I knew it wasn't mine. She had taken a lover, someone she wouldn't name. I was furious. We fought terribly. I said things I can never take back. And then she went into labor early. The birth went wrong. She bled for hours. I held her hand while she died, begging her forgiveness, promising I would care for her child, but she made me swear to send you away. To let you grow up free of this place. She died knowing I would honor that promise." "So you did love her," Isla said. "I love her still," Damian replied. "Though she's been dead 22 years, I love her still. That's my curse. To be bound to this house, to hear her singing in the night, to feel her presence but never truly have her. That's what Ravenscroft does. It preserves love beyond death, but turns it into torment." As if in response to his words, the temperature in the room dropped suddenly. Isla's breath became visible in the cold air. And then, clear as crystal, a woman's voice began to sing. It was a lullaby, sad and sweet, in a language Isla didn't recognize. The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, filling the room with ethereal beauty. Isla's heart hammered in her chest. "That's impossible." "That's your mother," Damian said softly, singing to the daughter she never got to hold. Tears sprang to Isla's eyes unbidden. The voice was so full of love and sorrow, so clearly addressing her specifically, that every rational explanation fled her mind. This wasn't wind in the chimneys, or imagination, or coincidence. This was real. The singing continued for several minutes, then faded slowly away. The temperature returned to normal. Damian stood with his head bowed, his hands clenched at his sides. "Now do you believe?" he asked. Isla wiped her eyes. "I don't know what I believe, but I can't deny what I just experienced." "Then stay," Damian said, turning to face her. "Stay and help me understand this place. Help me find a way to free the dead so they can finally rest. I've been trying alone for 2 decades and gotten nowhere, but together we might succeed." Isla looked around the room, at the candles and flowers, at the bed where her mother had died. She thought about the singing, the love she had heard in that ghostly voice. She thought about her life in the village, the poverty and loneliness and sense of not belonging. And she thought about Damian, this strange, tormented man who loved a ghost and maintained a shrine to the dead. "I'll stay," she said, "for now, but I make no promises beyond that." Damian's expression softened, and for the first time, Isla saw something other than bitterness in his face. Hope, perhaps, or simply relief at no longer being alone. "That's all I ask," he said. Chapter 3: The Weight of History. The following weeks transformed Isla's understanding of Ravenscroft Hall entirely. She and Damian fell into an uneasy partnership, spending their days researching the house's history and their nights experiencing its supernatural manifestations. Isla discovered she had a gift for organization and analysis that complemented Damian's intuitive understanding of the house's moods and patterns. They worked in the study, surrounded by centuries of Pharaoh family records, trying to find some common thread that might explain why the dead lingered here. Isla created timelines and charts, mapping out which spirits appeared where and when. Damian contributed his years of observations, filling in details she couldn't have known. "Look at this," Isla said one afternoon, spreading several documents across the desk. "Every major manifestation corresponds to a death that occurred during emotional extremity. Thomas Pharaoh killed his wife in rage and jealousy. Margaret threw herself from the tower in grief. Your father died of a heart attack during an argument with you." "I know," Damian said quietly. "We fought about Catherine. He thought I was obsessed. He was right." "The point is," Isla continued, "the common factor is intense emotion at the moment of death. Perhaps that's what binds them here. Unresolved feelings, psychological energy that somehow imprints on the physical space. Making this house what? A battery for human suffering." Damian's tone was bitter. "Or a trap," Isla suggested. "Think about it. The house draws pharaohs back, generation after generation. We live here, we suffer here, we die here in states of emotional turmoil, and then we're trapped here forever. It's a cycle." Damian leaned back in his chair, considering. "So how do we break it?" That was the question they couldn't answer. They tried everything they could think of. They attempted seances using techniques Isla found in books on spiritualism. They tried blessing the house with prayers from various religious traditions. They even hired a medium from London, a theatrical woman who claimed to communicate with the dead, but ultimately fled the house after one night, saying the spirits here were too strong, too angry for her to help. Through it all, Isla and Damian grew closer, though their relationship remained complicated and fraught. They were bound by shared purpose, but also by something deeper, an understanding of what it meant to be lonely, to be different, to be trapped by circumstances beyond one's control. Isla found herself watching Damian when he wasn't looking, noticing the way his hands moved when he was deep in thought, the rare occasions when his severe expression softened into something almost gentle. He was not an easy man to like. He was moody and often cruel in his honesty, dismissive of social niceties, prone to brooding silences that could last for days. But he was also brilliant and surprisingly vulnerable when his guard dropped. He cared deeply about things most people would dismiss as nonsense, and he loved with an intensity that both frightened and fascinated Isla. For his part, Damian seemed equally conflicted about Isla's presence. Sometimes he treated her as a partner, an intellectual equal whose insights he valued. Other times he withdrew, becoming cold and distant, as if afraid of letting her too close. One evening, as winter settled over the moor and snow began to fall, they sat together in the library after a particularly frustrating day of research. The fire crackled warmly, creating a bubble of comfort against the howling wind outside. "Tell me about her," Isla said suddenly. "About my mother, not about how she died, but how she lived. What was she like?" Damian stared into the fire for a long time before answering. "She was like spring after endless winter. That's the only way I can describe her. When Catherine walked into a room, everything felt lighter, warmer, more alive. She had this laugh, bright and unrestrained, that made everyone around her smile, even if they didn't know what was funny." He paused, his expression distant with memory. "She loved music, played the piano beautifully, though the instrument downstairs is ruined now. She would compose her own songs, silly things about the moor and the ravens and the wind. And she sang constantly, just like you've heard her do. That lullaby she sings now, she wrote it herself when she was pregnant with you. What were the words about? Isla asked softly. Hope, the future, a life free from this place. She wanted so much more for you than what she'd had. That's why she made me promise to send you away. She knew Ravenscroft would destroy you like it destroyed her. But I'm here now, Isla pointed out. Yes, Damian said, finally looking at her. You're here, and I don't know if that's fate or foolishness or simply the house getting what it always wanted. But I'm glad you came, Isla, even knowing what this place will cost you. Does that make me selfish? Yes, Isla said honestly, but I understand. I'm glad I came too, despite everything. They sat in silence for a while, watching the fire burn low. Then Damian spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm afraid of you. Isla turned to look at him, surprised. Afraid of me? Why? Because you make me feel things I thought I'd buried with Catherine. Hope, connection, the possibility that maybe, just maybe, I could love someone who could actually love me back. And that terrifies me more than any ghost ever could. Isla's heart raced. She had felt the attraction growing between them, the electric tension that made every accidental touch feel significant. But she had told herself it was just proximity, shared isolation, nothing more. Now, hearing Damian's confession, she had to confront her own feelings. I'm afraid too, she admitted, of this house, of the dead who won't rest, of you and what you make me feel, but fear isn't a reason to run. My mother ran, or tried to send me away to run, and what good did it do? I'm here anyway. Maybe we're meant to face our fears rather than escape them. And if facing them destroys us, Damian asked, then at least we'll be destroyed honestly, trying to live rather than just surviving. Damian reached out and took her hand, his grip warm and solid. You're braver than I am. No, Isla said, just more reckless. They laughed, and the sound was strange in that house of sorrow. But it felt good, like a small rebellion against the weight of history pressing down on them. That night the manifestations were stronger than ever before. Catherine's singing filled the entire house, joined by other voices in a ghostly chorus. Objects moved in empty rooms, doors slammed. The temperature dropped so low that ice formed on the inside of windows. Isla and Damian stood together in the entrance hall, holding candles against the dark, watching their breath form clouds in the frigid air. They're angry, Damian said. They can sense something changing. Let them be angry, Isla replied, surprising herself with her defiance. We are still alive, we still have agency, and we will find a way to break this cycle even if the dead don't want us to. The house groaned around them as if in protest, but Isla stood her ground and Damian stood beside her, and together they faced the fury of the haunted dead. Chapter 4: The Revelation. Spring came late to Blackthorn Moor that year. It was well into April before the snow finally melted and the first green shoots appeared among the heather. Isla had been living at Ravenscroft Hall for over a year now, and the house that had once seemed so foreign now felt like home, for better or worse. She and Damian had settled into a routine of research and experience, documenting the phenomena, trying different approaches to release the spirits. Nothing had worked, but they hadn't given up. Their relationship had deepened as well, though in ways neither fully acknowledged. They had not become lovers, despite the attraction that crackled between them. Some unspoken boundary held them back, perhaps the spectre of Catherine that still haunted Damian's heart, or perhaps simply fear of what would happen if they gave in to their feelings. But they were partners in every other sense. They worked together, ate together, sat by the fire together in the evenings, talking about everything from philosophy to poetry to the mundane details of maintaining a crumbling estate. Isla had used what little money she had to make basic repairs to the house. The roof no longer leaked in the library. The kitchen stove worked properly, small improvements that made life more bearable. And then, one evening in late April, everything changed. Isla was in the study alone, going through a box of old letters she had found in the attic, when she came across something that made her blood run cold. It was a letter from Catherine to her maid, Sarah, written just days before Catherine's death. "My dearest Sarah," it read, "I am dying, I can feel it. The child within me takes all my strength, and I fear the birth will finish what the pregnancy has started. But I die with a secret I cannot take to my grave. The child's father, I have never told a soul his name, and I am sorry for that deception. But you must know the truth so you can protect her from it. The father is Damian, my cousin, my ward, the boy I raised and cared for. I know the horror this will cause, the scandal, the sin of it, but I loved him, Sarah, not as a sister or a guardian, but as a woman loves a man. I fought that love for years, knowing it was wrong, forbidden. But when my husband died and Damian came to me in his grief, confessing his own love, I was weak. I gave in, just once. One night of passion that I will never regret, no matter the cost. But Damian cannot know. He would be destroyed by the knowledge that his love was returned. He would blame himself for my death, for the child who kills me. You must raise her far from here, and you must never let him know she is his daughter. Promise me, Sarah, promise me." The letter fell from Isla's nerveless fingers. Damian was her father. The man she had been falling in love with was her own father. She sat frozen, her mind refusing to process the implications. Everything she thought she knew about her origins, about Damian's relationship with Catherine, about the nature of their current connection, all of it was lies, or rather, incomplete truths that had led her catastrophically astray. How could Catherine have kept this secret? How could Sarah have honored such a promise, raising Isla in poverty while her actual father lived alone in wealth, never knowing he had a daughter? And what would this knowledge do to Damian? He had spent 22 years mourning a woman he believed had never loved him back. Learning the truth now would reshape everything. Isla heard footsteps in the hallway. Damian was coming. She quickly folded the letter and hid it in her pocket, her hands shaking. "There you are," Damian said, entering the study. "I've been looking for you. I thought we might take a walk on the moor before the rain comes. You look pale. Are you unwell?" "I'm fine," Isla lied, standing quickly. "A walk sounds good." They walked in silence across the wild landscape, the wind pulling at their clothes. Isla's mind raced. Should she tell him, show him the letter, or should she honor Catherine's dying wish and keep the secret forever? But how could she continue as they were, growing closer, edging toward something that felt inevitable, knowing they were father and daughter? The thought made her sick. Damian must have sensed her distress because he stopped walking and turned to face her. "What's wrong? And don't say nothing. I know you too well now. Something has happened." "I found a letter," Isla said, the words coming out before she could stop them. "From my mother to Sarah." She pulled out the letter and handed it to him, unable to meet his eyes. Damian read it in silence. Isla watched his face, saw the color drain from it, saw his expression cycle through disbelief, shock, joy, and then horror as the full implications hit him. "No," he whispered. "No, this can't be true." "It's her handwriting," Isla said. "You would know." "She loved me," Damian said, his voice breaking. "All those years she loved me and never said. And your daughter," Isla finished. "Yes." Damian sat down hard on a rock, the letter clutched in his hand. He looked shattered, as if every foundation of his existence had just crumbled. "Everything I've felt for you," he said hoarsely, "everything I was beginning to hope." "Was wrong," Isla said, though the word felt like a knife in her heart. "We are father and daughter, Damian. What we've been feeling, it can't happen." "I know," he said. "God help me, I know." They sat together on the moor as the rain began to fall, two people who had found connection only to have it poisoned by truth. The house watched from its hill, dark and silent, as if satisfied with this newest tragedy. That night, the manifestations were the strongest they had ever been. Catherine appeared visibly for the first time, not just as a voice or a cold spot, but as a translucent figure in the master bedroom. She was beautiful, just as Damian had described, with dark hair like Isla's and eyes that held both sorrow and love. "I'm sorry," the ghost whispered, her voice echoing strangely. "I'm so sorry. I thought I was protecting you both, but I only created more pain. Why didn't you tell me? Damian demanded, tears streaming down his face. Why did you let me believe you didn't love me? Because you would have blamed yourself for my death, Catherine's ghost replied. Because I knew the guilt would destroy you, because I was a coward who couldn't face your pain, but I was wrong. Secrets always cause more harm than truth. I see that now. Can you rest? Isla asked, her voice shaking. Can knowing we know the truth free you? Catherine's form flickered. Not yet, there's more. The curse of Ravenscroft, it's not what you think. It's not the house that traps us. It's love itself. Love that refuses to accept death, that clings beyond reason, that won't let go. Every pharaoh who haunts this place does so because they loved someone or something so much they couldn't bear to leave it behind. Then how do we break the curse? Damian asked. By letting go, Catherine said. By accepting that death is final, that love must end, that clinging to the past only creates suffering. But I cannot do it. I am too weak. I love you both too much to release my hold on this world. Her form began to fade. Find another way. Find a way to live without me, without this house, without the weight of history. Be free, my loves, be free. And she was gone. Isla and Damian stood alone in the room, surrounded by flowers and candles, facing an impossible choice. They could stay at Ravenscroft, bound by blood and history and the ghosts who wouldn't rest. Or they could leave, abandon the house and each other, and try to build lives free from this curse. I can't be your father, Damian said quietly. I can't look at you and see a daughter. I've already come to care for you in ways that make that impossible. The best thing I can do is leave, truly leave this time, and never come back. No, Isla said, that's not the answer. Running away is what every pharaoh has tried, and it never works. We need to face this differently. How? Damian asked desperately. Isla thought of her mother's ghost, of the centuries of pharaohs trapped by love and pain. She thought of the cycle repeating endlessly, generation after generation suffering and dying and refusing to let go. And she realized what they had to do. We burn it down, she said. We burn down Ravenscroft Hall, and we break the physical anchor that holds the dead here. Without the house, the spirits will have nowhere to cling to. They'll be forced to move on. Damian stared at her in shock. Destroy the house, our inheritance, our history. Our prison, Isla corrected. Damian, how many more generations should suffer here? How many more pharaohs should be trapped by the dead? If we truly want to honor my mother's wish for us to be free, we have to destroy the thing that enslaves us. She wanted you to be free, Damian said, not me. She wanted us both to be free, Isla insisted. Her last words as a ghost were to find a way to live without this place, so let's give her that. Let's end this once and for all. Damian looked at the room around them, at the shrine he had maintained for 22 years, at the physical manifestation of his love and grief and obsession. Isla could see the war in his eyes, the desire to cling to what he knew versus the desperate need for liberation. Finally, he nodded. All right, we'll do it, but not tonight. We'll take time to salvage what's worth saving, the family records, the things that have actual value. And then, when we're ready, we'll burn it all. Chapter 5, The Cleansing Fire. It took them 3 weeks to prepare. They worked methodically, going through the house room by room, deciding what should be saved and what could be destroyed. The family records went into trunks. Valuable books from the library were packed carefully. A few pieces of furniture, the ones with actual craftsmanship and history, were sold to collectors. Everything else stayed. The dusty sheets and water-stained portraits, the ruined piano, the shrine in Catherine's room, all of it would burn. The ghosts seemed to sense what was coming. The manifestations increased in frequency and intensity. Voices pleaded with them to stop. Objects flew through the air in rage. Cold spots became freezing vortices that made it nearly impossible to enter certain rooms. But Isla and Damian persisted. They had made their choice. On the night they had selected for the burning, the 1st of May, traditional festival of fire and renewal, they stood together in the entrance hall one final time. They had doused every room with lamp oil. They had opened windows to create drafts. The house was ready to become its own funeral pyre. Damian held a torch, its flame dancing in the draft. "Are you certain?" he asked Isla. "Once we do this, there's no going back." "I'm certain," Isla said. "We are ending the curse, for ourselves and for every pharaoh who comes after us." "There won't be any pharaohs after us," Damian pointed out. "You're the last of the legitimate line, and I obviously cannot father children with you. The bloodline ends here." "Good," Isla said firmly. "Let it end. Let this whole tragic history end. No more pharaohs trapped by this place. No more suffering in the name of inheritance and duty." Damian smiled, sad but genuine. "You're remarkable, you know. Catherine would be proud." "She's watching," Isla said. She could feel it, the presence of her mother's ghost hovering close. "They're all watching, waiting to see if we're brave enough to free them." Damian took a deep breath. "Then let's not disappoint them." He touched the torch to the oil-soaked curtains. They caught immediately, flames racing up the fabric and spreading across the ceiling. Within moments, the entrance hall was ablaze. Isla and Damian ran, lighting other fires as they went. The library, where Isla had spent her first night. The study, where they had done so much research. The kitchen, the drawing rooms, the dining hall. Every room received the torch's kiss. The house screamed as it burned. That was the only way Isla could describe it. The groaning of old wood and the roar of flames combined with the wails of the ghosts, creating a cacophony of agony that seemed to shake the very foundation of reality. They reached the master bedroom last. Damian paused at the threshold, looking at the room he had maintained so carefully for so long. "Goodbye, Catherine," he said softly. "I loved you, I will always love you, but I have to let you go now. Please forgive me." He threw the torch onto the bed, and the clean linens erupted in flame. The flowers in their vase shriveled in the heat. The candles melted into shapeless lumps. And as the room burned, Catherine's ghost appeared one last time, fully visible, more solid than Isla had ever seen her. She looked at Damian with infinite tenderness, then turned to Isla and smiled. "Thank you," she mouthed, though no sound came out. "Be free." Then she was gone, not fading but simply ceasing to exist, as if a switch had been flipped. Isla felt something break in the air around them, a tension that had been present since she first arrived at Ravenscroft, releasing all at once. The other ghosts were vanishing too, their voices fading into silence. The curse was breaking. "We need to go," Damian said urgently. The fire was spreading faster than they had anticipated, the old dry wood burning like kindling. Smoke filled the hallway, making it hard to breathe. They ran down the stairs, through corridors that were becoming tunnels of flame. The heat was tremendous, scorching their skin. Isla stumbled, and Damian caught her, half carrying her toward the exit. They burst through the front door just as part of the roof collapsed behind them, sending a geyser of sparks into the night sky. They staggered away from the house, across the overgrown grounds, until they reached the iron gates and could finally stop to catch their breath. Turning back, they watched Ravenscroft Hall burn. The flames were visible for miles across the dark moor, a beacon of destruction and liberation. The house that had stood for 300 years, that had imprisoned generation after generation of pharaohs, was being reduced to ash and memory. "It's beautiful," Isla whispered. "Yes," Damian agreed, "beautiful and terrible, like most endings." They stood together through the night, watching the fire consume everything. By dawn, Ravenscroft Hall was nothing but a blackened shell, smoke still rising from the ruins. The curse was broken. The ghosts were gone. And Isla and Damian stood free at last, though the price of that freedom was everything they had known. Epilogue, New Foundations. 5 years later, Isla stood in the garden of a modest cottage in the village of Thornfield, tending to roses that bloomed despite the harsh climate. She had used the money from selling the Ravenscroft land to buy this place and establish a small school for local children. Teaching gave her purpose and connected her to the community in ways she had never imagined during her isolated year at the hall. She had not seen Damian since the night of the fire. He had left for London the next day, true to his word that he could not be a father to her. They had corresponded occasionally through letters, brief notes that carefully avoided anything too personal. He had found work as an editor for a publishing house. He was alive. He was managing. That was all Isla knew. She missed him terribly, though she knew their separation was necessary. They had been too tangled in each other, their relationship twisted by secrets and proximity and the house's malevolent influence. Distance had been the only way to find clarity. But sometimes, late at night, she wondered if they had made the right choice. If destroying the house and separating had truly freed them, or if they had simply traded one form of imprisonment for another. The sound of a gate opening made her look up. A figure stood at the entrance to her garden, silhouetted against the afternoon sun. "Hello, Isla," Damian said. He looked different, healthier. The gaunt, haunted quality he had carried at Ravenscroft was gone, replaced by a solidity that suggested he was finally at peace with himself. His hair was shorter, more neatly kept. His clothes were simple but well-made. "Damian," Isla breathed, setting down her gardening tools. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see if you were all right," he said, approaching slowly, "and to tell you that I've met someone, a woman in London. We are to be married in the autumn." Isla felt her heart clench, but she forced a smile. "That's wonderful. I'm happy for you." "Are you?" Damian asked, studying her face. "Truly?" "Yes," Isla said, and realized she meant it. "You deserve happiness, Damian. You deserve a life free from ghosts and curses and impossible situations." "So do you," Damian replied. "Have you found that? Has anyone caught your eye here in the village?" "Not yet," Isla admitted, "but I'm content. I have work I love, a home I've made my own, friends. That's more than I ever had before." They stood together in the garden, the silence between them no longer fraught with tension, but simply peaceful. "I think about her sometimes," Damian said quietly. "Catherine, about what she would think of us now. Do you suppose she's truly at rest?" "I hope so," Isla said. "I like to think they all are, all the pharaohs who were trapped, that burning the house freed them to finally move on to whatever comes next." "And us?" Damian asked. "Are we free?" Isla considered the question. Were they? They had escaped the physical house, but the memories remained. The knowledge of what they were to each other, the feelings that could never be properly resolved. "We are freer than we were," she said finally. "That's something." Damian nodded. "I suppose it has to be enough." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. "I brought you something, a letter I wrote years ago but never sent. I want you to have it now, but promise me you won't read it until I'm gone. Can you do that?" Isla took the envelope, feeling its weight. "I promise." "Good," Damian smiled, and it was genuine, the smile of someone who had made peace with his choices. "Then I'll go. I have a train to catch. But I wanted you to know that I don't regret meeting you, Isla, despite everything. You saved me from a lifetime of lonely obsession. You gave me the courage to burn down my prison. I'll always be grateful for that." "And I'll always be grateful that you didn't turn me away that first day," Isla replied. "That you helped me understand what I was inheriting. That you stood with me through all of it." They embraced briefly, the hug of family members who care for each other but know they cannot be in each other's lives. Then Damian turned and walked away, back through the gate, disappearing down the village lane. Isla watched until he was out of sight, then looked down at the envelope in her hands. She was tempted to open it immediately, but she had made a promise. That night, alone in her cottage with a fire crackling in the hearth, she finally broke the seal and read Damian's letter. "My dearest Isla," it began, "by the time you read this, I will be gone from your life, and that is as it should be. I am writing this to tell you the truth I could never speak aloud. When I first saw you standing at Ravenscroft's gates, I saw Catherine. The resemblance was uncanny, painful. I thought the house was tormenting me, sending me a ghost made flesh. But as I came to know you, I realized you were nothing like her. You were stronger, fiercer, more willing to face hard truths. You challenged me. You refused to be frightened away. You became not an echo of the woman I loved, but someone entirely your own. And I began to love you for yourself, not as a replacement for Catherine, but as Isla, which is why learning you were my daughter was both the best and worst revelation of my life. Best, because it meant Catherine had loved me after all. Worst, because it meant I could never have you the way my heart wanted. I am leaving Ravenscroft and leaving you because I love you, both as a father, which I should be, and in ways a father should never feel. Distance is the only way I can honor both truths. By the time you read this, I hope I will have found someone else to love, someone I can have a normal life with. I hope the same for you. But know this, you will always be extraordinary to me. You will always be the woman who freed me from my ghosts. And if in some other life, some other world where we were not bound by blood and fate, things could have been different, I would have chosen you. I will always have chosen you. Live well, my daughter, live free. That is all Catherine wanted for you, and all I want now too. With love eternal, Damian. Isla read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face, before finally folding it carefully and placing it in a locked box where she kept her most precious possessions. She understood now. They both loved each other in ways that couldn't be reconciled with reality. The curse of Ravenscroft hadn't been the house at all. It had been love itself, love that refused to acknowledge boundaries, that persisted in the face of every obstacle, that could not be reasoned with or controlled. They had broken the curse by accepting that some loves could not be fulfilled, by choosing to walk away rather than be consumed. And that took a different kind of courage than any ghost or fire could test. Isla slept that night without dreams for the first time in years, and when she woke, the sun was shining on Blackthorn Moor and the wind carried no whispers of the dead. She was free. They both were. And that finally was enough. The end.